The Colombian Illanos is part of Orinoco Plain. The total area about 345,000 square kilometers. It's a very extensive habitat of riparian forest, woodlands, extensive wetlands and grassland. It's an amazing place for bird watching and for wildlife in general. Most of the Illanos is in Venezuela, but that is closed country at the moment because of political situation. It's almost privately owned and there are very few national parks here. I booked this trip through Cunagilaro Travel. It means ocelot. That's the name of the travel agency. It's a very difficult name to pronounce for me, but it was a very good operation and everything was done for me. It was an all-inclusive package. It started for Yopal and I went to Alta Gracia National Reserve. There was a nice woman in the office called Laura who was very good at booking flights and everything from me. Laura got hold on a freelance bird guide in Medellin who's called Juan de Repo. He conducts sometimes bird tours for clients from North America, for example, in the Central Andes. He actually, after this trip, went to see the helmeted curassow. I wish I knew that because otherwise I have a John for that trip. The Illanos is actually endangered because there are a lot of rice development. The Chinese are buying up land from the landowners and convert it into rice fields. And that requires a lot of spraying with pesticides from airplanes. And that is very bad news for the wildlife because they get poisoned from the pesticides. And also the insect numbers are declining and that is very bad for the bird life. Additionally, there are some areas which are undergoing fracking, and that is a very water-demanding process, and that is also bad news for the area. Fortunately, a lot of rangers have realized there's a lot of tourism potential to protect the wetlands, and therefore they have formed some association. And this range I visited, Alta Gracia, is part of that. About 1 million hectares are protected in that way. That's great news, but it's also a real good income from the rangers when you receive tourism. It's important to visit those areas because otherwise they will sell their farms to the Chinese and then it's converted into rice fields, and that's terrible news. I got here in April and it is the end of the dry season. It is the build-up season and very few thunderstorms have been around, but it was still oppressive hot. And I had heat stroke twice on the trip. So it was incredible hot, and I will regret I didn't come 1 month later in May because then you get the thunderstorms. On the other hand, it's very difficult to reach this area during the wet season because the roads are terribly bad. That's why it took 9 hours to get here in a four-wheel drive. We had to cross 19 gates, and my guide had to open the gates 19 times and close them again. When we got to the lodge, it's actually very nice. You have a hacienda, and there's a hammocks there. You have your room and showers and everything, and you get very good food. Sometimes they go to the lagoon and catch some fish, and we get it here as a meal. Otherwise, they have a lot of meat to serve because the cattle is just outside. They also have pigs running around and horses. There was a deer there. It was actually standing there. And suddenly a cattle tyrant came and landed on his back. Saw quite few deer on the farm, but some of them have blisters, kind of an insect which form infection and destroy the animal. I think there's a lot of disease here because there's a lot of insects around. I got bitten many times by ticks. One of the dreams, actually, when you get out to the grassland in South America, is to see the anteater, the giant anteater. It's a massive animal, and they are living exclusively extracting termites from their mounds. The drill is to get out there very early in the morning before sunrise, and then you have the guides walking ahead to spot it. And it's very shy. When you spot it, it moves very fast away. Fortunately, this time, I was lucky that the anteater was distracted and tried to find some termites near a tree sampling, and therefore it stopped up and I could get very close and film it. We have the bobwhite calling here in the morning. We were very lucky to see a buff-breasted sandpiper here. It's actually a rare vagrant. I've seen it in Denmark and also in Australia, but there are very small numbers and they're very spread out on the migration route. Additionally, we're lucky to see the upland sandpiper here. They come in small flocks and also like the grassland, a typical prairie bird. One morning we had to go to the woodlands. It's not far from the hacienda. We walked down there before sunrise and hoped to see an ocelot crossing the grass fields. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to see that. But we heard quite a few crestless curassows calling. They sit in the top of the tree in the early morning and call. And when we got there, they flew away. And during the day, you don't see or hear them. They're very shy birds, probably because of hunting. Another morning, we went on a boat trip out to the lakes. The water has receded a lot from the wet season, and there's only a few potholes and lakes left. That is tantamount to that a lot of birds are assembling in one place and therefore easier to see. You have parrots flying across all the time in the morning. It was really nice to watch the sunrise. We went into a lagoon where we could hear the Hodsons calling, and there was a few boat-bill herons around. The herons with a massive boat bill. And suddenly we could see some otters appear. They were preening. It was very, very nice to see. The otters are quite common, the giant otter. We saw them several times on the trip. I was very lucky to see those sunbitters displaying this time. I never seen that before on any of my South America trips. It's not because sunbitters are rare. They're quite common actually. You see them on every trip, but never displaying like that. The eggs of the caiman have hatched. A lot of babies have emerged. It's great to see, and it's the first time I've seen it. And also, there's no predators around, apparently, since they have survived so far. The skimmer is a very special bird because the lower mandible is much longer than the top of the bill. And that is very special because they use it for hunting techniques, as they can skim the surface and catch fish and crustaceans and things like that in the surface of the water. The lesser yellow-headed vulture is very common in Illanos. They use terminal upwinds to form screws of vultures. In that way, they can watch the whole range from a distance and then to seek out a dead cow, a fall-over carcass. This time of year, big flocks of fork-tailed flycatchers pass through on the way to North America. It's a migrating bird, and it stops here to catch flies and insects. This is Christian other lodge where we are seeing zigzag heron, and indeed part of the conservation area.
Con esa energía solar que así solo, o sea, antes cuando no tenían esta energía era muy difícil. En cambio, con energía solar por lo menos pueden cargar celulares.
The heat was so oppressive that even the buff-necked ibis felt so. They're actually trying to ventilate. That's why they're breathing like that. We were lucky to hear the howler monkey, and suddenly a group of monkeys came out. They were a family, not really a troop, just a family. And they were sitting on top of the tree, and we could see it easily. The time has come, we have to go into the forest. We could hear a pale-tipped tyrannolid. It's a kind of tyrant flycatcher, which is widespread in South America, and there's a lot of species in that group. We could hear it, and we played back the tape from the mobile phone, and then the bird appeared. I didn't get video of it, but I got this picture. There's no need to wear Wellingtons here in this forest because it has dried out. That is great news because it would have been terrible hot to wear Wellingtons. In the woods we also have the Amazonian black tyrant, a nice bird to see. Cuckoos are very difficult to see in South America. There are a lot of species, but they're very, very difficult. The ground cuckoos are the most difficult. But we saw the little cuckoo here and also the squirrel cuckoo. They're the most common. We were also fortunate to find this double-banded puff bird. It's sitting very quiet. It can sit for hours and wait. And suddenly there's some insect around and he flies away to pick it and come back to the same branch or another branch nearby. Most of the time it doesn't move and therefore you don't see it. It was a great surprise to me that the wire-tailed manakin was so common. We saw it several times and they were displaying. The manakin has a very nice wire tail, and that's something the females like. There's another species of anteater in the area, and that is the tamadura. They prefer to live in trees because they find termites inside holes in the tree trunk and in cavities. When we were finished with birding in the woods, we actually came across some people who found an anaconda lay in the grass. To sunshine. You know, it's a very strange snake because they need a lot of heat to warm up. The people there, they were waiting for it to return into the hibernation in a hole in the riverbank. A dried out area, of course, so it's not flooded. But I could not stay there for very long because I had a heat stroke. We can hear some sharp-tailed ibis calling. It's a very special ibis. Unlike other ibises, they're actually solitary. You see them in pairs, sometimes 4 or 5 if it's a family. They like to dig their bills down in the wet soil to seek crustaceans, earthworms, and snails. A small flock of bare-faced ibis is also poking their bills in the ground. But most of the time this area is flooded. And then the water is receding and there's only potholes and water in the deeper creeks. Here we could see the herons. We saw cat heron. We saw a lot of turtle and also a hinga. We saw a hinga here. In this almost dried out pond, we found an electric eel. It's a very special fish in the genus Electroturus. Very obvious, because it has something to do with electricity. They are known for their ability to stun their prey by generating electricity, delivering shocks up to 860 volts. Because the pothole is devoid of oxygen, the eels have to come up to the surface to aspirate. One of the local guides associated with the hacienda where we stayed, he screamed to them, and suddenly they screamed back and got excited. And that's why we see this flock really displaying in the front of us. Only for 1 minute and they disappeared. The breeding season is starting up for the Orinoco geese, and then they form pairs. They like to nest in tree holes, something left over from a parrot or something. The geese feed on the grass for insects and leaves and everything. It's a vegetarian goose, and you see them during the dry season in big flocks, feeding and swimming in the lagoon. It was a great experience to me to see the Orinoco goose because I never seen it before, because it's so difficult to see outside its range here in Orinoco Delta. Some of the Orinoco geese actually migrate to Manu National Park or even further in southeastern Peru. I've been there, but I did not see Orinoco goose there. But some tour groups actually see them on the riverbanks when they take the boat up river to the lodge. It has been a great relief for me because it's a bogey bird for me. I missed it so many times on my Amazonian trips. But here in Illanos, you see it all over the place. And it's from big groups. No problem to see it here. That was one of the reasons I decided to go to the Illanos, to see the Orinoco goose. While we were down to the lagoon, we also had a very nice encounter of rosenet spoonbill. It's an amazing bird, which has a distribution all the way from Florida down to Argentina. It's very common here, and you see big flocks of rosenet spoonbill. Especially when the rosenet spoonbills fly across the lagoon. It's very, very spectacular. Now it is time for a sundowner. Sundowner is something invented in South Africa. When you go on safari, you sit there at the table and have a gin and tonic, and then you watch the wildlife. And here there was served white wine, but it is great to sit there and relax in the afternoon to watch all the birds in such a setting. And after that, we packed up and went back to the hacienda. On the way back, we saw a white-tailed nightjar right on the ground. That was a great pleasure to see. I've seen a lot of them in Guyana, so they're quite common in the area.